Hi, my name is Tom Cannell. I am a longtime resident of Lee County. I was a Lee-Tran driver for 3 years from 2013 to 2016. During this time, I saw many things from my working on the inside of Lee-Tran about which I thought I could offer suggestions for improvement. To illustrate my ideas, I thought I would talk about three different models of transit. Two models have already been in use or have been tried by Lee-Tran, but another model has yet to be considered. These models are the trunk and feeder system, the grid system, and the synchronized time transfer pulse system. I want to persuade you that this last system, the time transfer pulse system, is Lee County's best option for the future of transit. Presently, Lee-Tran utilizes the unsynchronized trunk and feeder system. The 140 route is the trunk route and backbone of this system. 6 buses carry passengers every 21 minutes north and south up US 41. Every other route in the system is a feeder route. It feeds and gets fed by the 140 route as it branches off from this main route. From this main trunk line, smaller feeder routes take passengers to other parts of the county: North Fort Myers, Buckingham, Cape Coral, Lehigh Acres, the airport, Fort Myers Beach, San Carlos Park, Bonita Springs, and so on. When the operation first began in 1974, everything was simple and basic. But as more routes were added to the existing structure, they weren't coordinated. Each route had a different headway or duration, and as a result, the system became increasingly disjointed and out of sync with other parts of the system. When I addressed Lee-Tran about this situation in December of 2016 and showed them a detailed proposal to transform the entire system from a trunk and feeder system into a pulse system, management replied, "We appreciate what you've done, but the public pretty much takes whatever we give them." The very next year, on November 21st, 2017, Lee-Tran presented to the county commissioners a completely different transit model, the grid system. The grid system is our second transit model, and it can be described as a network of high-frequency routes with predictable rapid-style service and comfortable stops, making transfers an acceptable part of commutes. This is from the National Association of City Transportation Officials. The most notable characteristic of a grid system is its high frequency. By this, we mean a headway, or the time or frequency between buses of the same route, of less than 20 minutes. Such systems have been very successful in the high-density areas of Houston, Texas, and Tampa, Florida, but both Houston and Tampa have population densities of over 3,000 people per square mile, and Lee County, in contrast, has less than 1,000 people per square mile. Even along McGregor Boulevard, where the population density is greatest, the number of people per square mile never exceeds more than 2,000 people. At the November 2017 work session meeting, the commissioners were not pleased with what they saw as problems with Lee-Tran's presentation. Here is one remark from Commissioner Kiker that sums up the feeling of the meeting.
But you're fixing it the same way, kind of let's just add more buses and sooner, faster, more of it. I'm kind of wasn't looking for that, personally. I was kind of looking for problem identification, problem solving, and if we implement this, then how are we going to redefine our business model, maybe? I'm not sure what business we're in here. It looks to me like we're in a business that is losing ridership, costs more money than we got, so let's spend some more doing the same thing. I mean, I don't mean to be too critical, but it kind of came across to me that way. I don't see what problems you're fixing. I just don't. I didn't get that out of this conversation.
It seems that Lee Trans should have known that the grid system would not fit in with Lee County's geography, economy, and population density, and they admit as much in the presentation.
So I don't think we have answers for you yet. As a matter of fact, I don't think we have really good recommendations for you yet. This is just a kind of a snapshot. You asked us to go take a look and see what's going on out there and bring it back and show you. Well, that's kind of what's going on out there right now. But I know that certainly I'm not prepared to want to make a recommendation to you about any one of these pilot projects or spending additional money at this point. Right now, our annual subsidy for Lee Trans about $12 million, I think, and to do different than we're doing right now, that number only goes up.
Commissioner Mann comments.
But Roger, I'm with you. I don't know what we're supposed to do, what we should have grabbed out of it. We certainly can't give you any direction,
Right.
And you're not prepared to give us any suggestions either. And I'm still trying to define the problem that we're looking for solutions to correct.
But otherwise, it's a transit system, and I don't think there's not that much out there that's brand new in transit. It's part of the problem.
It seems that both the commissioners and Lee Tran were at an impasse in pursuing a solution to improving transit in Lee County. One would think that Lee Tran would have walked away from this meeting with a call for a new perspective on its plans for the future. So let's examine Lee Tran's current situation. For this, we look to Lee Tran's own 10-year transit development plan. And we can see that Lee Tran's agenda for improvement is to ask the county for $66 million over 10 years to make improvements to its trunk and feeder system. Again, this is exactly what the commissioners don't want. It is more of the same. And what kind of improvements was Lee Tran intending to make? From this list excerpted from the 10-year transit development plan, we can see that the majority of proposals have to do with increasing the frequency of routes at a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars per route. What is disturbing about this list is that it appears that Lee Tran is oblivious of improving transit in Lee County in any other way except by spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, increasing frequency, and decreasing headway. I think the problem here is that Lee Tran is working with a severely restricted number of transit models. They are unable to see how its system could improve in any other way except from the perspective of a trunk and feeder or a grid model. This is where I would like to introduce a completely different model of transit called the synchronized time transfer pulse system. This third system is best for Lee County because it is ideal for lower population densities and lower frequency areas such as Lee County's. When I was a driver for 3 years with Lee Tran, I could see that people were missing their connecting buses by mere minutes and that they were spending needless hours a day waiting for their next bus to arrive. I was determined to come up with a system that would eliminate these deficiencies, and I saw by synchronizing routes or by making provision for transfers ahead of time for the passenger that we can make better meets. So I contacted Jarrett Walker, PhD from Stanford University and owner of Walker & Associates, a firm which has built transit systems around the world. He penned a book entitled Human Transit: How Clearer Thinking About Public Transit Can Enrich Our Communities and Our Lives. When I asked Mr. Walker to comment on my efforts to improve the situation here in Lee County, he said that my ideas about synchronization were part and parcel of what a pulse system was all about, and that my efforts, moreover, looked good to him. I used his book to glean more insights about the pulse system. I noticed that Mr. Walker says that the only way to improve a system with low-density population and low-frequency transit service was to employ the synchronized time transfer pulse system. So with Mr. Walker's encouraging words and his expert guidance aiding me, I saw that I was on the right track. Here is how Mr. Walker describes the pulse system. It's a network of routes mostly running every 30 or 60 minutes. The central idea of the network is the pulse, a meeting of buses from each route every hour or half hour at a central point so that you can connect from any bus to any other even though the frequency is poor. Geometrically, there is no other solution to the problem of connections in low-frequency everywhere-to-everywhere networks. It's routine in small cities across North America. And Mr. Walker gives the following illustration from his book. If our local bus network has several lines that we can afford to run only every 60 minutes, then the only way to provide reasonably fast connections is to coordinate all of the schedules so that the buses from each route come together at a central point. At this point, the buses sit together for a few minutes so that people can connect between any two buses. Then once that's done, the buses leave together along their respective routes. The theory of the pulse system is that if we can make bus connections more frequent instead of merely making route frequencies shorter, then the system as a whole will become more efficient instead of only this or that particular route. And it will cost far, far less money too. In other words, instead of trying to improve the system one route at a time at a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars each, we work to see how we can improve to make the system itself and the connectivity between routes more efficient. Here's an illustration of how we could have 4 buses arrive every hour on the hour at Cape Coral Transfer Center simply by tweaking the schedules of 4 Cape Coral routes. In this system, passengers easily transfer from one bus to any of 3 other buses without waiting at the transfer hub. And this is exactly what the pulse system is designed to do. It's a principled approach and a major improvement on the random and unsynchronized trunk and feeder system. In Cape Coral alone, for example, bus connections stand to be improved by over 1,500%. Not only can we coordinate buses to meet at major transfer hubs on a regular and consistent basis, but we can also multiply the number of transfer hubs and transfer points in the system too. A transfer hub is where 3 or more buses meet on a regular basis, and a transfer point is a place where 2 buses meet on a regular basis. Presently, Lee County has 3 main transfer hubs: Rosa Parks, Edison Mall, and the Bell Tower. In addition to these 3 major hubs, they also have 6 major transfer points. These are Merchants Crossing in North Fort Myers, Homestead Plaza in Lehigh Acres, Summerlin Square, Lover's Key, San Carlos Marketplace, and Old 41 in Bonita Springs. This map shows the areas, marked in red, where Lee Train is able to provide fairly regular transfers between buses. Now watch how a synchronized pulse system can multiply both transfer hubs and transfer points while increasing the area where transfers are made. According to our plan, Merchants Crossing would not be considered a transfer hub instead of a transfer point because both the 590 and 595 would meet every hour there along with the 140 bus. In addition to Merchants Crossing, we would also add Cape Coral Hospital. There, bus meets would increase from 2 times a day to 160 times a day, an 8,000% increase. Also, we would have hubs at Michigan and Marsh, Radar Court off Tree Line, and at Cape Coral Transfer Center. In addition to these hubs, transfer points could be added at Del Prado and Northeast 3rd Street, Del Prado and Northeast 6th Street, Orange Grove and Pondella, Orange Grove and Hancock Bridge, Cypress Lake and Florida Southwestern College, San Carlos Boulevard and Summerlin Road, Coconut Point, and Bonita Beach at US 41. That's an improvement from 3 transfer hubs to 8 and 6 transfer points to 13. The areas in purple are where people would see a major difference in service. But the improvements the Pulse system makes would not only apply to people in the purple area only. Connections in the red areas would improve as well. For example, Edison Mall connections would increase to 150% from its present capacity, and both Bell Tower and Summerlin Square meets would increase by over 300%. Transfer hubs, transfer points, and transfer efficiency would all increase by 250% across LeadTran's entire system. Although LeadTran has claimed that it is quote-unquote synchronized enough, we can simply look at the map and see that this is not the case. Major improvements all over the county can be made, and this in turn enhances the connectivity of the entire system. With regard to building more shelters to accommodate the increase in transfer hubs and transfer points, there's no need to worry. In many cases, a shelter or stop already exists, and those places could easily be used to transfer passengers safely. For example, this stop on Del Prado and Northeast 3rd Street already has a shelter, and 2 buses can easily fit into the turn lane to exchange passengers on the sidewalk. In only 2 cases would it be wise to build new shelters. One is at Michigan and Marsh, where we have 5 buses meeting within 15 minutes of each other on a regular basis, and the other is on Radar Court, where up to 4 different buses can meet every 90 minutes to exchange passengers. In fact, there are a number of shelters right now in Lee County that are not being used optimally that could easily be transferred to one of these hubs. I might point out that LeadTran's own research has pointed to customers having had complaint about the lack of connectivity and having to wait between bus trips. This is on page 163 of the final version of LeadTran's 10-year plan. The Pulse plan is the specific remedy for this very situation. Accomplishing the task of synchronizing the buses is a relatively simple thing. The plan is simply to make routes as much as possible to have the same duration or headway instead of having dissimilar headways. And instead of decreasing headway or increasing frequencies indiscriminately as LeadTran does presently, what we really want to do is to slow down the system ever so slightly by roughly 5% so that buses can make effective connections throughout the county every hour or 90 minutes all day long on a consistent and predictable basis. LeadTran says it needs a computer to analyze all the algorithms of my plan, but one should intuitively realize that if you slow down a system, you're going to have more time to make connections than you did when you were running it faster. In 90% of the cases, I used LeadTran's own times to create new schedules. In the other 10% of cases, I noticed discrepancies in LeadTran's times. After all, I was a driver for 3 years and I have first-hand knowledge of these times, so I went out on my own to verify those times. I will stand by my own times as being more accurate than LeadTran's, but of course, LeadTran is more than welcome to submit their own findings on my work, and we welcome that interaction. Driver recovery times have also been extended. On the 140 route, for example, we've done what LeadTran would never dream of doing. We've actually slowed down the headway from 21 minutes per trip to 22 minutes and 15 seconds. That's only 75 seconds longer. Just by doing this, we increased driver recovery time from 15 minutes to over 22 minutes per trip. How is this possible? Well, when you take 6 buses and multiply them by 75 seconds, you come up with extra minutes to add to that route, which is added to the driver's recovery time of 15 minutes. Safety is the number one concern for a transit agency, and nothing at all has been compromised with the Pulse plan. Moreover, by slowing down the route frequency, you can also add a bit more distance to the route. For example, if LeadTran should ever want to build a transfer hub where the 241s meet in Fort Myers, it would already have the extra time built into the route to be able to cover that distance. It should be mentioned that the Pulse plan has nothing against increasing system frequencies or expanding services, but it's not necessary to do so in order for the Pulse plan to function, and it's not an essential feature of the system either. The overall strategy of the Pulse plan is simply to multiply and to make connections more efficient. So long as the basic strategy of maintaining connectivity is followed, the system has the flexibility to accommodate changes in frequencies so long as available funds and public demand warrant the expenditure. In summary, we've discussed 3 different transit models, 3 different perspectives, but only one is a best fit for Lee County. 1. We've already shown that the present trunk and feeder system is inefficient in making bus connections. We estimate that Lee-Tran is currently running at less than 40% of its capacity in the area of connectivity. The standards by which Lee-Tran judges its own performance don't even include connectivity as a factor, as shown by the following table. If connectivity is not a metric for Lee-Tran to measure its own efficiency, how could it claim to be in a position to construct a system with connectivity as its prime directive? Thank you to Mr. Paul Goyette for seeing value in my plan.
Ideas and concepts are all good. I mean, this is great stuff. Anytime you can synchronize routes better and get better leads, and we're all about that. That's what we do. That's our profession.
It would be great to work with Mr. Goyette, but when it comes to working with Lee-Tran as an organization, there really hasn't been very much cooperation. Earlier this year, on January 13th, Dave Harner, Assistant County Manager, emailed the county commissioners in which he told them, Lee-Tran met with Mr. Cannell last year to evaluate his proposal for synchronizing bus schedules. While transit staff shares his view for synchronization, the majority of what Mr. Cannell proposed would require Lee-Tran to add resources and increase its operating budget. A significant portion of Mr. Cannell's proposed improvements centered on an increase in system frequency, which would require additional transit vehicles. Given the comments provided by you to staff at the November work session on Lee-Tran, it would be premature for any further meetings to take place with Mr. Cannell at this time. I was quite taken aback by this evaluation of my plan because it wasn't at all true. I contacted Mr. Harner and offered to discuss the matter with him, but he wouldn't consent to talk with me unless I flew in from Hawaii to talk to him in person, and even then he wouldn't consent to agree on what it was we would actually talk about. Of course, Mr. Harner may have been genuinely confused because he took the criticisms made about Lee-Tran's own grid plan and attributed them to my Pulse plan. This is why I've made this video to delineate clearly the differences and characteristics between all these transit models so that no confusion will be possible. I've already explained that high frequency is a characteristic of the grid system, not the Pulse system, and I've already explained that more buses are not necessary for the Pulse plan to function and that it is not an essential attribute of the system. It is unfortunate that Mr. Harner's characterization has set us back by quite a number of months. We've already seen that the grid system is not suitable for Lee County because Lee County doesn't have the population density or the bankroll to finance a high-frequency transit system. The upfront cost would run $12 million to increase the fleet from 50 to 200 vehicles, and if the operating budget expands along with its capital investment, even with matching funds, Lee County could end up paying $40 million a year for its transit service, double its current expense. Finally, we come to the synchronized time transfer pulse system. It's the best fit for Lee County because, 1, it's a low-frequency plan for a low-density area. According to Jarrett Walker, the pulse system is the only way to ensure efficient system connectivity. You don't have to take my word for it. It's corroborated by a worldwide known professional transit planner. 2, The Pulse system will have 250% more connections than Lee-Tran's present trunk and feeder system. It will also have more than double the number of hubs and transfer points than it does now, more than doubling system connectivity. 3. A Pulse system does not, I repeat, does not increase Lee-Tran's operating expenses, and it does not, I repeat, does not require more buses. It is a simple realignment of existing routes to get optimal usage from Lee-Tran's own resources. In other words, we aren't trying to get more money from the taxpayer to improve services by merely increasing route frequency. Rather, we are making the system itself more efficient in order to get the most production from our tax dollars in the best possible way. 4. Bus connections in Cape Coral will increase to over 1,500%, 15 times its present rate. 5. Passengers of Lee County will save hours upon hours on their trips getting from one point of the county to the other because transfers will be integrated, multiplied, and optimized from one end of the county to the other. 6. Sales of bus passes will increase given that the new system is designed to optimize transfers between buses. It might even be possible to raise the price a bit on bus passes since the efficiency of the system will make it much more attractive to buy bus passes, creating more demand for this service. 7. Ridership will increase because it will be easier and more efficient to get from one part of the county to the other. 8. The Pulse system has already been employed in such counties as Sarasota and Collier, and it is working just fine. In other words, the Pulse plan has demonstrated its ability to be successful in the smaller transit markets as it can be here in Lee County. 9. The county commissioners were complaining at the November 2017 workshop that Lee-Tran wasn't being run like a business. The Pulse system is the answer to that criticism because it improves the system without costing the millions of dollars for which Lee-Tran is asking. It is no longer business as usual or more of the same. It's a fresh new way of approaching transit from an integrative, holistic approach. The commissioners definitely want this plan, even if they do not realize it yet, because it fits in with the broad guidelines expressed in their November work session meeting of last year. Lastly, Jared Walker says the Pulse system is like a work of art. A lattice of interconnected pulse points, all beating as planned in unison or alternation in a pattern that repeats each hour, is a thing of beauty if you can visualize it, especially because if the motion of pulsing suggests the movement of blood through the heart, it's like watching the inner life of a large, multi-hearted organism. We too, as stakeholders, should imagine our transit system as something alive and beautiful, just like the large, multi-hearted organism to which Jarrett Walker alludes. The county's citizens deserve to have the best possible transit system, with their lives interconnected through a series of synchronized routes and hubs. As always, complete information, including bus schedules, meet sheets, animations, and maps. Every aspect of the synchronized time transfer pulse plan is available at www.abetterleetran.site. We have a lot to gain by not spending millions of dollars and nothing to lose in implementing the synchronized time transfer pulse system. This system is Lee County's best solution to improving its transit services. Thank you for your consideration in this matter and for your patient time and attention.